Hang Gliding Flight School is a free educational resource created to share the fun and adventure of flying by encouraging, teaching, and inspiring aviators of all ages. Aviation videos provide a supplement, never a replacement, for face-to-face in-person training with qualified teachers. Visit hangglidingflightschool.com for a map of nearly 500 flight instructors and hang gliding clubs all around the world.
Good day, aviators, and welcome to another episode of Hang Gliding Flight School. My name is Eric, and this episode of Hang Gliding Flight School is going to teach you some of the basics of electric bicycles and review this E-Bycco 24-inch EB7Pro. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wait, I thought Hang Gliding Flight School was about hang gliding. Why are you doing a review of an electric bicycle? I mean, what do electric bicycles have to do with flying hang gliders? Well, in fact, electric bikes have everything to do with flying hang gliders. You see, mountain action sports athletes contend with the identical problem of logistics. It doesn't matter if you fly hang gliders from the top of mountains or ride downhill mountain bikes on mountain trails, or you enjoy downhill mountain boarding on fire roads. We all have the exact same problem of how can we enjoy our sports solo if we need someone to drive us back up the mountain? I mean, even people who are into kayaking have this issue, right? How do you get 6 or 9 or 10 miles back up rivers or mountains to retrieve your vehicle if you don't have anyone around to give you a ride? Well, how about an electric bike? So the plan is you lock your bike at the bottom of the mountain, drive your hang glider up to your launch site, fly down the mountain, then after you land, you use your e-bike to retrieve your truck. If you're feeling really bold and adventurous, you could do it the other way around. Leave your truck at the bottom of the mountain and then use the electric bicycle to carry the hang glider up to the top.
Utilizing e-bikes as vehicle recovery in mountain sports is a whole new way of looking at e-bikes. And now you understand why I'm reviewing an electric bike for Hang Gliding Flight School. Now, I watched dozens of reviews on electric bikes, but I found no reviews where anyone tested e-bikes for several miles up mountain inclines. And no one ever explains the safety concerns of battery technology. So those topics are what this video is going to cover. Now, most of those other e-bike videos also tend to be disingenuous commercials disguised as authentic reviews. I am not one of those shills making a commercial. I do not have affiliate discounts for sales. The manufacturer did not give me this bike for free. I bought this with my own money, and I have no association with any e-bike brands. So, I'll talk about the bike itself in more detail later, but first, let's dive into general information about e-bike technology, starting with battery safety.
Back around 2015, a novelty toy showed up on the market called a hoverboard. It was basically a battery-powered two-wheeled Segway without handlebars which you controlled by weight shift. I've never understood why they stole the name hoverboard from Back to the Future, because these two-wheeled hoverboards obviously didn't fly like hoverboards did in the Back to the Future films. Now, due to shoddy manufacturing, these wheeled hoverboard batteries from dozens of manufacturers constantly caught fire. You may have heard these types of battery fires are almost impossible to extinguish, but no one ever explains why these fires can't be put out. And the reason is, when a lithium-ion battery burns, the chemical reaction actually produces oxygen. This is why the fire can't be extinguished, even underwater. And that is why, once these fires start, they become explosive. And this caused immense property damage, burning down homes and apartments, and even a few deaths. And as a result of countless hoverboard fires, many retailers stopped selling the devices, and Underwriters Laboratories developed a new safety certification called UL 2849, designed to test the safety of what were deemed e-mobility devices, which they also applied to electric bicycles and electric scooters. Now, UL 2849 certifies the entire electrical system, while UL 2271 certifies the battery. By law, New York City and California now require all electric bicycles to have UL 2849 certification. However, do not blindly trust claims posted on manufacturers' websites. Anyone can display an Underwriters Laboratories logo and claim their e-bike meets these standards. Make sure you research where that model of e-bike earned its certification and confirm the certification is legitimate on the website of the testing facility. For example, the Specialized brand of e-bikes claim to be certified on their website, and you can also confirm those bicycles are all listed on the Underwriters Laboratories website, proving the test claims are legitimate. Most electric bikes have a battery which stores the electricity, a hub motor on one or both wheels, although some bikes have something called a mid-drive, which is a motor in the bottom bracket. And finally, they have a computer called a controller, which regulates the electrical input from the battery to the motors based upon your throttle input. These three components comprise the system which is collectively tested for UL certification. And finally, if you happen to live in California, not only do all electric bike manufacturers require UL certification, but they are also legally required to send you a copy of the full test results if you request to see them. To put it bluntly, many of these companies outright lie. They post fake logos and fake claims about making certified products, but they don't have any paperwork to prove those claims. If you're interested in any e-bike from any manufacturer, I highly suggest you reach out and request a copy of their certification test results. If they don't provide one, you may want to reconsider purchasing their products.
So, electric bicycles use lithium-ion batteries, but not all lithium-ion batteries are the same. Cell phones also use lithium-ion batteries, but they are relatively safe because the electrical power stored in phones is so small. But e-bike batteries store a massive amount of electrical power, and that is why they have the potential for being dangerous.
This graphic shows how lithium-ion battery chemistries generally rank in terms of safety and thermal stability from safest to least safe. Out of the 6 main types of lithium-ion batteries, most e-bikes use lithium, nickel, manganese, cobalt oxide batteries, also called NMC or INR cells. Now, this type of information can be very difficult to confirm, but for peace of mind, you may want to make sure that your e-bike is using one of the safer battery chemistries. There are a number of bicycles out there which are very similar to the Ebycco EB7Pro. Most of these electric bicycles are mass-produced by a small number of companies in China. People purchase these bicycles in bulk at a discount, alter a few components here and there, slap a name and logo on the machine, and suddenly they are an e-bike company. But the truth is, they are all selling the same basic bicycles. Now, as you can see, these different brands of bikes share the same basic frame design, the same battery style, even many of the identical components. Now, like I said at the start, most reviews of e-bikes never tell you this because they are liars and shills. They are making glorified commercials for these manufacturers and are trying to make money from affiliate links and get free merchandise. Well, I don't work for these companies, so I'm not going to lie to you and pretend these are all a bunch of different bikes. They are the same bicycles with slight modifications, and all these different companies are really just fancy resellers. Now, since all these bikes are pretty much the same, what made me decide on Ebycco? Customer service. I emailed numerous e-bike companies with questions, and Ebycco was the only company which repeatedly responded to my inquiries very quickly and respectfully, usually the very next day. I appreciated that. These other e-bike companies took several days to reply, and some didn't reply at all. Responsiveness is why I decided on the Ebycco brand. The first thing I want to note is that the Ebycco website claims the bike is UL certified, but I could not confirm the EB7Pro was certified when I bought it in March of 2025. Now, I know, I went to all this trouble to explain the importance of safety and certification, then I bought a potentially uncertified bike. However, the battery is allegedly a Samsung battery, and LG and Samsung are regarded as some of the most well-constructed batteries on the market. Now, it also appears the controller may be legitimately certified, although I could not confirm the certification of the battery or controller because I didn't want to disassemble them. However, I did confirm the battery charger is legitimately certified on the Underwriters Laboratories website.
I prefer to always buy products made in the United States when I can. Not only should every citizen support the livelihood of fellow citizens in the nation where you live, but when purchasing a product, you also want to make sure that you have good customer service and readily available parts. Therefore, if you live in the United States, it's best to purchase an e-bike from a US-based company.
This is also why I always suggest American hang glider pilots should purchase a Northwing hang glider like my Northwing Easy 2, because Northwing is the only brand of hang gliders made in the United States. And this makes Northwing aircraft extremely affordable, along with having economical parts and dramatically reduced shipping costs.
Now, to my knowledge, there are over 80 electric bicycle companies based in the USA. However, many of them outsource much of their manufacturing overseas.
And only 3
of those companies make a dual motor bicycle.
Rambo Bicycles, Wired e-Bikes, and Quiet Cat.
So, as much as I would love to buy a dual motor, all-American e-bike, regrettably, those 3 are a bit above my budget.
Now, as promised, here are some hill climb tests with the EB7Pro. So let's start with this ride, which is 6.4 miles long and has a 1,472 foot elevation gain. This averages out to a ratio of 1 foot of elevation every 22 feet of distance. The battery started at 57.9 volts, which is 94% charged, and ended at 53.2 volts, which is 67% charged. So that means I only used 27% of the battery capacity. Now, I'm not going to show the entire ride because that's about 30 minutes of footage, but this should give you a good general idea of the type of terrain I was able to cover. Here is the elevation profile showing the full distance so you can get a good sense of the route. The route is a little steep, and then there is one brief section which levels out a little, and after that, it gets even easier. But other than those 3 variations, most of the path is a fairly consistent incline. I did almost this entire ride using pedal assist, and by the time I reached the top of the mountain, my legs were not tired at all. Pedal assist made it extremely easy, and using pedal assist does help prevent the electrical system from overheating since you're giving the motors some assistance. I have gone into the controls of the bike and limited the top speed to 12 miles per hour. This fire road is extremely wide and very smooth and well maintained, so you might be able to push it to 15 to 20 miles per hour on some smooth and straight stretches. But even on such a safe road, those speeds start to get risky. There are many sections of road which get extremely rutted and bumpy and shockingly narrow. So if you're forced to weave and maneuver and alter your line through those challenging patches at high speed, you run the risk of running into a cliff or falling over one. So I find that forcing myself to a 12 mile per hour speed limit allows me to ride slow enough to anticipate and react to even the more difficult road conditions. You have to remember this bike is a very low-end machine and does not have very robust components. You can't tear through this kind of terrain at the speeds you would use on a traditional dirt bike because this bicycle will break. The suspension works fine for leisurely rides in the city or gentle rides on smooth fire roads. But I do not expect the EB7Pro to withstand the abuse of doing hardcore off-roading, hitting bumps and ruts, and slamming over tree roots at 30 miles per hour. You get what you pay for. It would be foolish to expect a $1,300 electric bike to withstand the same abuse you would subject to a $5,000 mountain bike or a $10,000 dirt bike. At a $1,300 price point, you need to be much more conservative in the terrain and the speeds you hit with this bicycle. You can safely ride down a grass hill in the local park, but you can't bomb down a mountain bike trail at 30 miles per hour. Speaking of that, the bike can be a little noisy. You can hear some plastic rattling as I ride. I believe the higher pitched sound is the rear fender slapping the frame, and the low hollow sound is the battery. As for the metallic squeaking in the front of the machine, I have no idea where that is coming from. It's either the neck or possibly the front suspension. And I tightened the neck very well, so I suspect the front suspension. Now, these aren't negative criticisms of the EB7Pro. These are just observations. Again, I never expected this bike to have the same build quality as a $7,000 Specialized or Trek. This is basically a budget commuter e-bike wrapped in an off-road appearance. For the price, this bike is very well made. The tubing is beefy, the frame welds are solid, and I'm confident it will hold up and last for many years. However, you also have to understand what it was designed to do and ride it under conservative conditions. It would be foolish to expect a $1,300 e-bike to be just as strong and capable as a $5,000 mountain bike. It's not. Which is why the most difficult riding conditions I will ever subject this bike to are these: climbing up smooth fire roads at 12 miles per hour. This bike may look like it's designed and built for serious off-roading, but it's really only capable of leisurely off-roading. Now, after 2 miles of climbing, I took a little break to feel the motors and the controller and check their temperature. It was about 65 degrees outside, and the controller and the motors were barely even warm, even after 2 miles and a 500-foot elevation gain.
Yeah, nothing. Yep, nothing. I wonder what the motors are like. Yeah, the motors aren't even warm. There's nothing. Nothing is overheating on it. So, pretty cool.
As you see, this fire road is extremely well maintained. The road is very wide and extremely smooth. It has very few rocks or ruts from erosion. Overall, it is an extremely easy road to ride because it is graded so nicely and taken care of so well. There are even a few short sections with some washboarding, which only happens when people drive far too fast on dirt roads. The fact there are sections ruined by irresponsible drivers going too fast proves how nice the road is before these idiots damage it. The scenery is lovely on this route, and it does make for a very pleasant and relaxing ride. Around every bend is a vista more scenic than the last, and the quiet hum of the electric motors is a nice subtle sound which doesn't overpower the wind or the birds around you, making the bike a great way to experience the landscape in peace and tranquility. At no point did the bike feel stressed or incapable of making the climb. I had plenty of power to spare, and the electrical system didn't seem to be suffering from any adverse effects of the climb. It performed flawlessly, and both motors have such a massive amount of torque, they pulled right through the dirt with no hesitation whatsoever. So here we are at the top of the test run, and again I will put the statistics on the screen so you can see how far and high in elevation the bike carried me on this ride. I think it's safe to assume this type of distance and elevation is vastly longer and higher than anything the average rider will need. Yet, it's also very similar to the type of terrain most hang glider pilots will need to traverse, as most hang glider launches seem to be around 2,000 feet high and require around 6 to 8 miles of driving to travel from the airfield up to the launch site. This next test is much more difficult. This ride is 6.6 miles long and has a 2,308-foot elevation gain. This averages out to a ratio of 1 foot of elevation every 15 feet of distance. The battery started at 58.4 volts, which is 98% charged, and ended at 53.3 volts, which is 67% charged. So that means I only used 31% of the battery capacity. This ride was done as throttle only, with no pedal assist, and I was still able to make it the full distance. Now the elevation profile on this road shows it is a lot steeper and slightly longer than the previous test, but the bike still made it with ease. So not only is this road far steeper than the first test, but it is also in much worse condition. This road is riddled with countless ruts, massive quantities of gravel, long stretches covered in fist-sized rocks, plus extremely narrow sections which are barely wide enough to fit a Jeep. All of these factors make this road far more challenging and far more dangerous to navigate at high speeds. So again, this is why I'm keeping my speeds no higher than 12 miles per hour for most of this ride. I just find that to be a safe maximum speed for these conditions. I could maybe push things to 15 miles per hour on more mellow sections of the route, but when you have to swerve and dodge big rocks and get your front wheel caught in a rut, it can be terrifying to dislodge the tire at 15 miles per hour when you're only 18 inches away from a 1,500-foot cliff. Staying on the road is extraordinarily easy if you ride at a rational speed. Falling off of a cliff is extraordinarily easy if you ride at a moronic speed. Now, I'm very familiar with numerous fire roads in Southern California, but I have never seen one in such terrible condition. Most of the off-road trails I have seen are maintained far better than this route, so it was a bit shocking to see such a neglected road with such a rough grade. I know there are much worse roads, but this one is pretty bad, especially compared to the previous test. The weather was pretty mild this day too, around 65 degrees, which is a great temperature to use an e-bike because it's warm enough to get good performance from the battery, but also cool enough to help prevent overheating any of the electrical components. Now, as for my riding experience, I'm a lifelong cyclist. I have been ranked number 5 in my age group in the state of California as a BMX racer, and I've been riding bicycles consistently year after year since I was about 7 years old. I've been riding motorcycles for over 20 years and have put over 120,000 miles on my 2004 motorcycle, which I bought brand new. Now, too many people arrogantly list their credentials as a way to validate their advice and insist you obey their instructions. That is not my motivation. I'm just telling you that I didn't buy a 50 mile per hour e-bike with zero experience. I know a little bit about bikes and motorcycles. So although this is my very first electric bicycle, I'm extremely experienced at driving similar modes of transportation. So I was comfortable in about the first 500 feet of riding an electric bicycle. I knew what I was doing right away because it's basically a cross between a bicycle and a motorcycle. So, if you are a motorcyclist or a mountain biker, you will quickly get the hang of a high-powered electric bicycle and know how to ride this. If you are not a motorcyclist or you haven't ridden a bicycle for 20 years, keep it on single motor and keep it in first gear just to play it safe. Ease into it, be careful. If you have never ridden a motorcycle or a dirt bike, these bicycles are far more powerful than anything you have ever experienced before. So take it slow and easy. I will say riding a bicycle with a motor on the front tire is incredibly unusual, and that is a totally new experience. The front motor has a massive amount of torque, and it can spin out very easily. Now, it's no issue when you're cruising at a consistent speed, but when you're accelerating, you really need to lean forward and put some extra weight over the front tire, or it will skid out on you. In fact, let me stop doing a voiceover and switch over to the natural audio, because once you hear what the tires sound like on this gravel, then you'll completely understand and you'll go, oh yeah, I wouldn't really want to ride much faster than 12 miles per hour on this road, because yeah, that's pretty sketchy.
Well, looks like the 24-inch tires are working just fine. I was concerned that maybe I should get 26s, but 24s are good. All right, we're definitely making really good progress here.
Now, there are numerous reviews showing this bike doing 30 miles per hour to 50 miles per hour. I've even seen a range test where a 275-pound guy took it 30 miles across mostly level terrain, averaging 16 miles per hour. So it will take you quite far if you aren't headed up mountain ranges. Now, once again, I did try this ride using throttle only, and the bike did die on me at one point. I was only about 500 feet from the top of the mountain, and I was riding up a section which was incredibly steep and had extremely large chunks of gravel. The gravel was about tennis ball or baseball sized rocks, and it was causing the tires to spin out really badly. I suspect the strain of trying to maintain grip on those rocks, coupled with the fact that I had climbed about 2,200 feet without using any pedal assist, is probably why the controller overheated.
The motors don't feel hot to the touch, not at all. In fact, even I'll take my glove off here, make absolutely sure. Yeah, they're not even warm. They're not even warm, dude. They're just... The controller is warm, though. Yeah, maybe the controller overheated. Could be. The controller is definitely warm. Like, very warm.
The plastic case was extremely hot to the touch, so I think the safety mechanism in the battery management system just shut the whole system down. I walked the bike up the last incline and reached the top of the mountain. It was getting late and it was quite chilly, so I waited a few minutes hoping the bike would cool off enough to restart it. Since I was at the top of the mountain, I could easily ride back down without the electrical system, but obviously I was really hoping the bike wasn't broken. Luckily, it did turn back on and I had no further problems riding back down the mountain. I was very careful to feather the brakes and check the heat on the rotors multiple times. Cable brakes are nice because you don't have to worry about overheating them as much. Hydraulic brakes work much better, but you have to be careful to not overheat them, or the oil can boil and rupture the brake line. So once again, here is a summary of this ride showing how long the ride was, how high the elevation climbed, and how much battery was used. Do I need 4,000 watts and dual motors to make it up a 6-mile long grade? No, probably not. I bet that bicycles with weaker drivetrains and smaller batteries could do this too. But would those smaller motors and batteries overheat? Would it be a huge strain for those 750-watt bikes to make this kind of climb? Unfortunately, as I noted in the beginning, nobody does tests like this. So I had no way of knowing if a cheaper and weaker motor bike could even make a climb like this. I didn't want to purchase a bike which could barely make it up the mountain. I wanted a bicycle which could handle this type of terrain without straining the drive system to the limits of its capabilities. And I should also add, on smooth terrain like this, the bike is very solid and silent. Riding up rough terrain like mountain roads, you get that bit of rattling. But here on a smooth bike trail, the bike is totally silent. Do I have any complaints about the bike? Honestly, I have very, very few. I'm a bit disappointed that the bike has 160mm brake rotors instead of 180mm. Even my Mongoose Dolomite has 180mm rotors, and that bike doesn't have electric motors. I find it crazy that such an incredibly powerful electric bike has such small brake rotors. Proving their UL certification, obviously, is a huge complaint. All e-bike companies should provide links on their website to testing company databases so consumers can validate their test results to prove their bikes are safe and certified. Just slapping some text and logos on their website is quite meaningless. And remember, here in California and New York City, it's now illegal to sell bikes which are not certified, resulting in potential fines up to $100,000 per violation under the Consumer Product Safety Act. If you are in the market for an e-bike, I suggest you start your search on the Underwriters Laboratories database. Look up companies which are certified for electrical systems for e-bikes. Then go to the manufacturer's website and see if you like that bike and if it fits your budget. I realize that my suggestion is a backwards way of shopping for a bike, but at least this way you confirm that the make and model is legitimately certified instead of trusting off-brand marketing sites which might be lying about their certification. In addition to finding bikes on the Underwriters Laboratories site, you can also look on third-party testing sites such as TUV Rhineland. They also do legitimate certifications for electric bikes. So here you can see not only the name of the company, but the country that that company is operating in and where they were founded. So for example, Aventon is a US-made e-bike, and if you look here, you could see their Rambless model name, right? And then you click on the link and they have a valid certificate which covers UL 2849. So this is another way that you can look up bikes that you know will conform to the proper safety standards. In fact, check this out. This is pretty cool. So on the Aventon site, if we look at, say, the Adventure M e-bike, and we scroll down here, you can see that it's UL safety certified. And if we look at the Rambless bike, we can see that it's TUV safety certified. But you know what I just mentioned about how every company should provide links to the certification? Well, check this out. If you click on that, it actually takes you to the Shopify CDN, and here is the certificate of compliance from Underwriters Laboratories. You can see that it's for the Adventure M bike, and you can see that it confirms that it complies to UL 2849. Now, if we look at the Rambless bike, do the same thing. If we actually click on the safety certificate, that link takes us to a whole new website. It takes us to Certpedia for TUV Rhineland and shows the valid certificate. This is really cool. I don't know of any other e-bike company which is doing this. And this is something that every single company should be doing. You should be able to go to the site, click on the link for that bike, and have it actually take you to the real certificate on that third-party site. But even being certified doesn't guarantee that a bike is safe. For example, Rad Power Bikes in Seattle, Washington insists that all of their bikes are UL certified. But that did not stop the Consumer Product Safety Commission from releasing a report in November of 2025 warning consumers to stop using Rad Power e-bikes because there were numerous reports of fires caused by their batteries.
In conclusion, e-bikes are a fantastic option for mountain sport vehicle recovery. You know, when I first bought my e-bike, I had intense buyer's remorse because it just felt like a stupidly expensive toy. But I slowly began to realize that e-bikes are an incredibly fun and unique form of transportation. I've owned cars, trucks, motorcycles, bicycles, and skateboards, but I've never owned anything quite like this. So, thank you so much for watching this episode of Hang Gliding Flight School. I hope this video taught you something new about electric bikes and will be helpful in your decision, especially if you want to use an e-bike in hang gliding. Now be sure to check the Hang Gliding Flight School website to find a worldwide map of nearby instructors who will train you to become a hang glider pilot. And remember, my friends, in the words of Ray Bradbury, you've got to jump off cliffs all the time and build your wings on the way down.